The fog rolled in thick off the Pacific as a gray sedan pulled up to the main gate of Naval Station Pacific Grove. Security lights cut through the mist, catching the green in the woman's eyes as she stepped out, one hand steadying a worn duffel bag. She wore jeans, a plain black jacket, and scuffed boots that had seen better days. Nothing that looked official, nothing that turned heads. The guard barely glanced up from his clipboard. He scanned her ID, nodded once, and waved her through without a word. Behind the gate, two sailors leaned against a concrete barrier, coffee cups steaming in the cold morning air. Another admin transfer, one muttered. Probably can't even work the new system. His partner laughed. Give her a week before she's crying to personnel. Their voices faded as she walked deeper into the base, fog swirling around her boots. She didn't respond, didn't look back, just kept moving, eyes taking in every rusted vehicle, every chipped paint marker, every detail that told the story of a place slowly forgetting what standards meant. No one knew the truth. The new clerk wasn't here to file paperwork. She was Captain Victoria Hayes, Pacific Grove's new commanding officer. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we show you how one woman transformed an entire naval base by walking among her own people in disguise, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. This story proves the most powerful leadership doesn't announce itself. It earns respect, one decision at a time. Victoria Hayes had worn navy blues for 22 years, but that morning she walked into Pacific Grove looking like any tired contractor. The duffel on her shoulder held one change of clothes and a tablet. Everything else, the medals, the commendations, the photographs with admirals and senators, stayed locked in a storage unit back in San Diego. She didn't need them here. Captain Victoria Hayes, youngest female commanding officer in the Pacific Fleet, the strategist who'd coordinated a carrier strike group through contested waters without firing a shot. The officer whose logistics innovations had cut deployment costs by millions while improving readiness. Pentagon briefing rooms knew her name. Fleet commanders requested her by reputation. None of that was written on the plain contractor badge clipped to her jacket. The sedan disappeared into the fog. Victoria walked alone past rows of warehouses, their doors hanging crooked on rusted hinges. Paint peeled from building numbers. A forklift sat abandoned in a parking lot, one tire flat, weeds growing through its frame. She'd read the reports before coming. Pacific Grove was failing every metric that mattered. Supply chain broken, maintenance backlogged, morale in the basement. But reports never showed the whole truth. She needed to see it herself. The administration building loomed ahead, 3 stories of gray concrete and narrow windows. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over desks buried in paperwork. Phones rang unanswered. Computers displayed error messages no one bothered to fix. Victoria approached the front desk where a petty officer sat, headphones in, scrolling through his phone. She waited. He didn't look up. She cleared her throat. He glanced at her, annoyed, pulling one earbud out. Yeah? Transfer from San Diego, Victoria said quietly. Reporting for duty. He sighed, reaching for a stack of forms without enthusiasm. Name, Hayes. Victoria Hayes. He typed slowly, one finger at a time, then printed a temporary badge. Supply office is 2nd floor, room 214. Report to Commander Roberts. She nodded. Thanks. He was already back on his phone before she turned away. The elevator groaned upward, cables creaking. Victoria watched her reflection in the scratched metal doors. No rank insignia, no decorations, just the face of a woman who'd spent too many nights in command centers making decisions that kept ships afloat and sailors alive. She'd commanded destroyers in the South China Sea. She'd coordinated humanitarian missions after typhoons. She'd sat across tables from foreign admirals and negotiated agreements that never made the news. All of that was invisible now. To everyone here, she was just another clerk. Commander James Roberts sat behind a desk drowning in paperwork when she knocked. Come in, he said without looking up. She stepped inside. Roberts was mid-40s, gray at the temples, exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. His uniform was crisp, but his shoulders sagged with the weight of too many problems and not enough solutions. You're the new transfer? He asked, finally glancing at her. Yes, sir. Administrative support, Victoria replied. He skimmed her orders, the sanitized version that made her look like a GS-11 contractor with basic logistics experience. Good. We need bodies, he said. Supply is a disaster. Requisitions are 6 weeks behind. Half the forms are filled out wrong. The other half are lost in the system. You'll work under Lieutenant Mason in inventory control. She'll show you the rest. Understood, sir. You know the new tracking system? He asked. I've worked with similar systems, Victoria said carefully. It's a mess, he muttered. Somebody in DC thought they could improve things. Now nothing moves without 3 signatures and a prayer. He handed her a folder. Report to Lieutenant Sarah Mason, room 226. Try not to quit in the first month. Most people do. I don't quit easily, sir. He looked at her then, really looked, for just a moment. Something in her tone made him pause. Then he shook his head and went back to his paperwork. Good luck, Hayes. You'll need it. Room 226 was chaos made visible. Desks crammed together, boxes stacked against walls, computer screens frozen on error messages. Voices overlapped. Someone on the phone arguing about a missing shipment, someone else cursing at a printer jam. Two people debating which form to use for equipment that should have been replaced years ago. Lieutenant Sarah Mason stood in the middle of it all. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back tight, eyes moving from crisis to crisis like someone juggling grenades. She spotted Victoria and waved her over. "You're Hayes?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Welcome to the nightmare," Mason said flatly. "We lost 2 people last month to burnout and 1 to a transfer. You're getting thrown straight into deep water. Hope you can swim," a voice called from across the room. "Hey, LT, the new tracking codes aren't working again." Mason closed her eyes briefly. "Of course they're not," she muttered. Then to Victoria. "You can start at that desk. Guest login is on the sticky note. We're processing backlogged requisitions. If something looks wrong, flag it. If something looks impossible, it probably is, but flag it anyway." "Yes, ma'am," Victoria said. She set her duffel down and sat at the empty desk. The computer screen blinked to life, showing spreadsheets full of red error flags. Behind each line was a unit waiting for parts, equipment, supplies they needed to do their jobs. She began to work. She didn't complain, didn't offer advice, just listened and watched. Watched how Mason moved through the room putting out fires with no real plan. Watched how people made jokes to cope with frustration. Watched how no one expected anything to actually get better. Through the window she could see the harbor, ships at dock, some with rust streaks down their hulls, cranes sitting idle, vehicles parked in lots with flat tires and missing parts. Every visible symptom of a base that had given up. By the end of her first week, Pacific Grove had shown its wounds clearly. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the slow rot of a place that had forgotten excellence was possible. The morning briefing in the conference room made it obvious. Officers sat around a table shuffling papers without enthusiasm. Commander Roberts ran through the agenda with the energy of someone reading from a script he'd stopped believing in. Captain Sullivan from operations flipped through a report and sighed. "These new readiness requirements are impossible," he said. "Whoever wrote them has never actually run a base. Probably some desk officer in DC who's never been deployed," another captain added. "They sit in air-conditioned offices and dream up policies that make our lives harder." Laughter rippled around the table. Victoria sat in the back corner, notebook open, expression neutral. She'd written the first draft of those readiness requirements in a Pentagon conference room, arguing for simpler processes and clearer standards. What had emerged after committees and compromises was heavier than she'd wanted, but still better than the chaos she was seeing now. In this room, though, the words lived a different life. "It's easier when no one at the top understands what we're dealing with," Sullivan continued. "We just can't keep up." Victoria wrote down their complaints, not to defend herself later, but to understand where her plans had failed to survive contact with reality. The problems went deeper than paperwork. In the communications center, she found equipment that should have been replaced 5 years ago. Cables held together with electrical tape, backup systems that hadn't been tested in months. The petty officer in charge, a woman named Rodriguez, showed her around with barely disguised frustration. "We keep submitting requests," Rodriguez said. "They get approved, then disappear into some black hole. Meanwhile, we're one power surge away from losing all base communications." "How long has this been going on?" Victoria asked. 2 years that I know of," Rodriguez replied. "Probably longer. Nobody wants to admit how bad it is because that means explaining why nobody fixed it sooner." In the mess hall at lunch, 2 junior officers sat behind her, voices low but frustrated. "You see the new maintenance schedule?" one said. "Whoever designed this never worked on actual equipment. It's like they think everything runs perfectly." His companion snorted. "I'd love 5 minutes with the genius who thinks we can hit these timelines with the equipment we have." Victoria poured her coffee slowly, listening. The maintenance schedule they were mocking was one she'd developed after months of data analysis, trying to balance readiness with realistic capabilities. On paper, it worked. Here, it was just another source of frustration. She sat alone near the window, notebook beside her coffee, quietly building a map of where theory met reality and shattered. She spent her evenings walking the base after most people had gone home, past warehouses where supplies sat unorganized, past vehicle lots where equipment rusted in neat rows, past barracks where paint peeled and windows leaked. Every step built a clearer picture of institutional failure. This wasn't enemy action. This was slow, bureaucratic death. The real breaking point came in the motor pool. Mason had sent her down with a stack of high-priority requisitions that needed sign-off. Master Chief Richard Cole ran the motor pool like a man holding back a flood with his bare hands. He stood among vehicles in various states of disrepair, grease on his hands, exhaustion in his eyes. "You from supply?" he asked when Victoria approached. "Yes, Master Master Chief. Got requisitions for approval. He took the forms, scanned them, and his jaw tightened. This again, he muttered. You people have no idea what these delays mean. We have vehicles that haven't moved in months. Parts sitting in warehouses somewhere while my Marines walk because we can't get simple approvals through the system. I'm not asking you to approve anything false, Victoria said calmly. I'm asking what you need to make this accurate. He looked at her sharply, as if trying to decide if she was another obstacle or something else. We need honest status report, not optimistic lie, he said finally. We need supply to stop marking things as shipped when they're not. And we need leadership to understand that every vehicle sitting dead is a mission that won't launch. She nodded slowly. Then let's start there. He stared at her for a moment longer, then made careful notes in the margins of each form, refusing to let anything slide. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night when the power grid failed. Victoria was working late in the supply office, untangling a backlog of data entries a junior sailor had been drowning in. The young man, Seaman Carter, had stayed with her, grateful someone was helping instead of criticizing. The lights flickered once, then everything went dark. Emergency lights clicked on, casting red shadows across the room. Somewhere in the building, an alarm began to wail. Carter jumped. What was that? Power's out, Victoria said calmly, moving to the window. Across the base, buildings had gone dark. Only emergency lighting remained, creating an eerie patchwork of red and shadow. This looks bad, Carter said, voice tight. Victoria's phone buzzed. Base-wide power failure. All personnel report to your duty stations. Carter looked at her. Where should we go? Supply office, Victoria said. But first, let me check something. She didn't go to the supply office. She went to the command center, Carter following uncertainly behind her. The emergency operations center was chaos when they arrived. Officers shouting over radios, computers running on backup power, status boards showing systems going offline one by one. Robert stood at the center, face pale, trying to coordinate responses. The backup generators aren't coming online, someone reported. We're trying to troubleshoot, but it's everywhere. Communications are spotty. Security systems are down. We can't reach half the base. A young lieutenant turned from his console, voice cracking. Sir, we have a destroyer attempting to dock in 30 minutes. They don't know our harbor systems are offline. If they come in blind in this fog, they could hit the pier or another vessel. Roberts' hand moved toward the phone. Can we reach them on emergency channels? Intermittent at best, sir, someone replied. The backup comms relay isn't functioning properly. Victoria watched systems failing in sequence. Harbor control dark, navigation lights offline, radio communications degraded. She'd seen this before in the South China Sea during a typhoon when a carrier group's electronics had taken lightning damage. The difference was, then she'd been in command. Here, she was supposed to be invisible. Roberts turned to his operations officer. We need to wave them off. Tell them to hold position until we restore systems. Sir, they're already committed to the approach, the officer replied. Fuel state is tight. They can't loiter long. Then we need harbor control back online now, Roberts said. But his voice carried the hollowness of someone who knew that wasn't happening. For a moment, no one moved. Victoria saw it clearly. The cascade of failures, the lack of contingency planning, the frozen paralysis of people who'd never been trained for this exact scenario. Every second of hesitation put that destroyer and its crew closer to disaster. She couldn't watch it happen. She stepped forward. Her voice cut through the noise, calm and absolute. Switch to channel 47 on the Marine band, she said. That's the emergency frequency all Navy vessels monitor. You can reach the inbound ship directly. Heads turned. Robert stared at her. Who are you? How do you know that? Because I've used it to coordinate emergency dockings in worse conditions, Victoria replied. Get me on that radio, now. Roberts hesitated for only a second. Something in her tone, the unmistakable authority of command, made the decision for him. Get her the radio, he said. A handset appeared. Victoria took it, keying the mic without hesitation. Inbound vessel, this is Pacific Grove Emergency Operations. Be advised, harbor control is experiencing complete technical failure. Do not, I repeat, do not attempt standard approach. Switch to manual docking protocol. Acknowledge. Static crackled. Then a voice came through, tense but professional. Pacific Grove, this is USS Defender. Confirming harbor control is offline? Affirmative, Defender. All automated systems are down. Fog is heavy. Visibility near zero. I'm going to talk you in manually. Who is this? The ship's captain asked. Call sign Sierra November, Victoria replied, using the phonetic for her initials without thinking. I'm qualified to guide you. Do you have a better option, Captain? There was a pause, then negative, standing by for instructions. Victoria turned to the nearest console operator. Pull up the harbor chart on backup power. Show me Defender's current position and heading. The operator hesitated, frozen. The system's down, ma'am. I don't Then use the paper charts, Victoria said sharply. They're in the cabinet behind you. Third drawer. Move. He scrambled, pulling out large navigation charts and spreading them across a table. Another officer found Defender's last known position from a backup system. Victoria studied the chart for 10 seconds, her mind calculating approach angles, current patterns, fog density, margin for error. Then she keyed the mic again. Defender, current heading will put you 20 meters off centerline. Adjust bearing 3 degrees starboard. Reduce speed to 3 knots. Acknowledge. Adjusting course. The voice came back. New heading 272, speed 3 knots. Good, Victoria replied. Hold that heading for 90 seconds. Then I'll give you your next adjustment. In the fog, you won't see the pier markers until you're nearly on top of them. Trust your instruments and trust my voice. For the next 22 minutes, Victoria stood at that radio, talking the destroyer in meter by meter. No computers, no harbor control, no margin for error. Just her voice, her experience, and the kind of calm that came from having done this too many times to count in waters far more dangerous than a California harbor. Around her, the command center had gone silent. Officers stood frozen, watching as a woman they'd thought was a supply contractor guided a warship through fog and darkness with the precision of someone who'd commanded at sea. Robert stood beside her, not speaking, just listening to the way she gave instructions. Clear, precise, anticipating the ship's responses before they came. When Defender's captain finally reported safely moored, his voice carried something new. Respect. Pacific Grove, we're secure. That was exceptional ship handling from shore. Sierra November, whoever you are, you just saved my ship and my crew. I'd like to know your name. Glad you're safe, Defender, Victoria replied, sidestepping the question. Welcome to Pacific Grove. She set down the handset and turned. Every eye in the room was on her. Robert stepped forward slowly, studying her face. Hayes, he said carefully. That wasn't contractor work. That was command-level ship handling. Where exactly did you serve? Here and there, Commander, Victoria said quietly. Mostly at sea. The way you just... He stopped, shaking his head. You quoted procedures most officers don't know. You handled that destroyer like you've commanded ships yourself. She didn't answer, just handed the radio back to the operator. Behind her, she heard someone whisper, check her service record. Find out who she really is. Victoria walked out, leaving a room full of people staring after her with questions they were only beginning to understand how to ask. By morning, whispers had spread. The new supply clerk spoke like a commanding officer. She'd quoted regulations most officers didn't know. She'd guided a ship through a harbor in the dark like she'd done it 100 times. People started noticing other things. The way she moved through spaces, not like someone visiting, but like someone inspecting. The small tattoo on her wrist, barely visible, matching the insignia of the carrier strike group that had operated in the Pacific 5 years ago. The way she spoke Japanese fluently when 2 sailors debated which port had the best food. Who was she really? 3 days later, the answer came in an email sent base-wide. Change of command ceremony. 0900 Friday. All personnel in dress uniform. Parade ground. The morning broke clear and cold. The entire base stood in formation. Boots gleaming, uniforms pressed. The band played as a figure emerged from the headquarters building in full dress whites. Every ribbon and medal in perfect alignment. Captain's eagles on the collar. The march carried her across the parade ground toward the podium. Mason, standing in formation, went white. Oh my God, she whispered. Master Chief Cole, near the motor pool formation, froze. The guard from the gate stood trembling, hand rising in salute. Everywhere, recognition hit like thunder. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer said, Captain Victoria Hayes, assuming command of Naval Station Pacific Grove. Silence fell. Thousands of eyes followed her to the podium. The same woman they'd mocked, dismissed, ignored. She stopped, scanning the formation. Every face that had once laughed at her, her voice carried across the parade ground, calm and clear. I spent my first week here as a contractor, she said. No rank, no uniform. I wanted to see this base the way you see it when no one important is watching. She paused. I saw frustration. I saw systems breaking good people. I saw equipment waiting for approvals that never came. But I also saw something else. People who still cared. People who fought to fix what they could. People who kept showing up. Her eyes found Mason. Lieutenant Mason, front and center. Mason marched forward, saluted. This officer held supply together when the system tried to break her, Victoria said. She'll lead our logistics reform starting today. Applause rose. Next, Master Chief Cole. He stepped forward, shock clear on his face. This chief refused to let standards slip even when no one was watching, Victoria said. He'll oversee our maintenance transformation program. Finally, she looked across the formation. From this day on, we fix problems before they become excuses." The words hung in the air. Then Robert stepped forward, saluting sharply. The base followed, hundreds of hands rising as one. The sound rolled across the parade ground like thunder. Victoria returned every salute, one deliberate motion at a time. 6 months later, Pacific Grove no longer looked like the same place. Supply chains ran smoothly. Vehicles gleamed. Morale soared. Mason, promoted to lieutenant commander, mentored younger officers. Cole's motor pool led the fleet in readiness. The corrupt supply officer who'd been stealing parts, court-martialed and removed. The rot was gone. When people asked how she'd done it, Victoria gave the same answer. Real leadership doesn't demand respect. It earns it, one decision at a time. Have you ever seen someone completely transform a broken system just by understanding it first? What would you do if you discovered your boss had been watching you all along? Drop your thoughts below. If this story proved that the strongest authority listens before it commands, hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to remember that real power doesn't announce itself, it proves itself.